Before another thought pulls your attention away, remain here for a little longer, because what is unfolding is quieter than coincidence, yet more meaningful than chance. There are moments in life when the truth does not arrive with noise. It arrives gently, almost unnoticed, until one heart suddenly realizes that everything it believed was incomplete. Today is one of those moments. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you, and it deserves to be heard from beginning to end. Far away from your own awareness, someone has begun seeing you through a different light. Not because you became someone new overnight, but because a truth they had never fully understood has finally reached them. For so long, they carried an image of you built from assumptions, scattered memories, unfinished conversations, and silent questions. They thought they understood your heart. They believed they knew the reasons behind your distance, your patience, your quietness, and even your strength. Yet they were only holding pieces of a much larger picture. Then, without expecting it, another piece appeared. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was simply honest. Sometimes a single honest moment can accomplish what years of confusion never could. A conversation, an unexpected memory, a familiar voice. Or even a quiet realization became the missing piece they never knew they needed. Suddenly, the story they had repeated inside their mind no longer fit together. They paused. They questioned themselves. They replayed moments they had once dismissed. What they believed was certainty slowly transformed into curiosity. Stay till the end, because this change did not happen all at once. At first they resisted it. People often do when the truth gently asks them to look again. It is easier to protect old conclusions than to admit that someone has been misunderstood. But the more they reflected, the more impossible it became to ignore what was now standing clearly before them. They remembered your kindness that had once seemed ordinary. They remembered your silence that now looked more like wisdom than distance. They remembered moments when you gave without expecting anything back, moments they barely noticed until now. Have you ever wondered why some people only understand another person's value after enough time has passed? It is not because the value was hidden. It is because understanding grows at its own pace. Some lessons cannot be rushed. Some hearts need quiet seasons before they recognize what has always been there. That is exactly where this journey begins. The truth they heard was not about perfection. It was about authenticity. They discovered that behind every calm decision you made was a heart trying its best to choose peace over pride. Behind every unanswered question was someone refusing to create unnecessary conflict. Behind every step forward was courage they had never truly appreciated. That realization stopped them. Not because they were overwhelmed, but because they finally saw the difference between what they imagined and what was actually true. Don't skip. Because the next realization became even more meaningful. For the first time in a long while, they stopped thinking about what they expected from you and started wondering who you really are. Those are very different questions. Expectations often create disappointment. Understanding creates connection. And without even realizing it, they began replacing old assumptions with genuine respect. Something inside them became quieter. Instead of replaying the past with frustration, they replayed it with compassion. Instead of searching for mistakes, they searched for moments they had overlooked. It was as though an invisible curtain had slowly lifted, revealing details that had always existed but had never been fully noticed. Perhaps this is why some truths arrive exactly when they are meant to. Not too early, not too late, but precisely when both hearts are finally capable of receiving them. Something important is waiting for you, because what they discover next will cause them to look at your journey in a completely different way, and that story has only just begun. There is something remarkable about the moment a person's perspective begins to change. It rarely happens in a single instant. Instead, it unfolds quietly, like the first light of morning touching a landscape that was hidden throughout the night. That is where this story continues. The truth they heard did not simply surprise them, it invited them to revisit every memory they had carefully stored away. One by one, those memories returned, but they no longer carried the same meaning they once did. They remembered times when you chose patience instead of proving yourself right. At the time, they misunderstood your silence. Now they recognized it as quiet strength. They remembered moments when you stepped back, not because you lacked courage, but because you valued peace more than unnecessary conflict. Slowly, an entirely different version of you emerged before their eyes, not a new person, but the person who had always been there. Stay till the end, because this realization became impossible for them to ignore. As each memory settled into its proper place, something unexpected happened inside them. They stopped asking why certain things had unfolded the way they did and began asking what they had failed to notice. That single question opened a door they had never considered before. Instead of focusing on what was missing, they began appreciating what had quietly remained constant all along. Your kindness. Your sincerity. Your steady heart. Qualities that often go unnoticed until someone finally learns to see beyond appearances. The more they reflected, the more they realized that genuine character rarely demands attention. It reveals itself patiently through countless small moments that many people overlook. They began recognizing those moments one after another, almost like discovering hidden stars after the sky grows dark enough to reveal them. Every forgotten conversation seemed richer. Every ordinary interaction carried new meaning. Don't skip. Because another unexpected realization was waiting just beyond this one. For a while, they simply sat with their thoughts. There was no rush to speak. No need to explain anything. Sometimes understanding grows best in silence. It gives the heart room to rearrange everything it once believed. During that quiet reflection, they understood something simple yet powerful: people are not defined by the assumptions others make about them. They are revealed through the consistency of who they choose to be every single day. That thought stayed with them longer than they expected. Without planning to, they found themselves imagining what it would feel like to meet you again with fresh eyes, without old expectations, without unfinished conclusions, without stories that no longer belong to the present. For the first time, possibility felt greater than uncertainty. Curiosity became stronger than hesitation. Something important is waiting for you, because this quiet transformation is only the beginning. Very soon, another unexpected piece of the story will appear, and when it does, they will realize that hearing the truth about you was never the final revelation. It was only the first step toward understanding something even more meaningful. Not every turning point announces itself. Some arrive so gently that they almost feel invisible, yet they leave behind a completely different future. That is where the journey leads now. After spending time reflecting on everything they had recently discovered, they realized that the truth about you had done more than answer old questions. It had awakened new ones, questions that could no longer be ignored. They wondered how someone could carry so much quiet strength without asking for recognition. They wondered how many moments they had overlooked simply because they were searching for something louder instead of something deeper. As those thoughts settled within them, an unexpected feeling began to grow. It was not regret alone. It was appreciation. Appreciation has a unique way of changing the heart because it replaces assumptions with understanding. They no longer looked back at your story through the lens of confusion. Instead, they saw someone who had continued moving forward with grace, even when very little seemed certain. That realization stayed with them far longer than they expected. Don't skip. Because the next realization became even more personal. They began noticing small reminders of you in places they had once passed without a second thought. A familiar phrase. A peaceful sunset. A melody that carried a comforting feeling. None of these moments demanded attention, yet together they formed something impossible to dismiss. Every reminder encouraged them to pause for just a little longer, allowing their heart to recognize what their mind had been too busy to understand before. Little by little, they stopped asking what life had taken from them and started noticing what life had quietly been trying to show them. They understood that meaningful connections are rarely built on perfect timing. They grow through honesty, patience, and the willingness to see another person as they truly are. That understanding brought a calm they had not experienced in a very long time. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. The truth they heard continued echoing in their thoughts, but now it sounded different. It was no longer surprising. It was reassuring. It reminded them that authenticity always leaves a lasting impression, even when it takes time for others to recognize it. They realized that your greatest qualities had never depended on someone's approval. They had always existed quietly, waiting for the right moment to be understood. That realization inspired them to do something unexpected. Instead of looking backward with disappointment, they chose to look forward with hope. They began imagining conversations built on honesty instead of assumptions. They imagined listening more carefully, speaking more thoughtfully, and appreciating the moments that often pass unnoticed. For the first time, the future felt less like a mystery to fear and more like a path waiting to be explored with greater wisdom. There was still one unanswered question resting gently within their heart. What would happen if this new understanding continued to grow? They did not have the answer yet, but they knew one thing with certainty: once genuine understanding enters the heart, it quietly transforms every decision that follows. The person who walked away from yesterday's assumptions could never fully return to them again. Something important is waiting for you. Because the next chapter reveals the choice they quietly began making after discovering the truth about you, a choice that even they never expected would matter so much. Some decisions are made in a single heartbeat, while others are formed so quietly that even the person making them does not realize how much they have changed until everything around them begins to feel different. This was one of those moments. The truth they had discovered about you was no longer simply a thought they revisited from time to time. It had become part of the way they now viewed the world. Every new experience seemed to return them to the same quiet realization: you had been far more genuine than they had ever understood. They found themselves paying attention to details they would once have ignored. They remembered the kindness you offered without expecting applause. They remembered the calm confidence that never needed to compete for attention. They remembered how you remained true to yourself even when it would have been easier to become someone else. These memories no longer felt ordinary. Together they revealed a pattern that had been present all along, waiting for someone willing to notice it. Don't skip, because what happened next surprised even them. One peaceful evening, while their thoughts wandered once again, they realized something they had never admitted before. The qualities they admired most had never been loud achievements or perfect moments. What stayed with them were the quiet acts of sincerity, the steady kindness, the gentle strength that remained unchanged no matter the circumstances. It was then they understood why your presence had never completely faded from their heart. Authenticity leaves a lasting impression because it asks for nothing while offering so much. That realization brought an unexpected sense of peace. Instead of wondering whether the past could have been different, they became grateful for the lessons it had quietly provided. Every misunderstanding had prepared them to appreciate honesty more deeply. Every unanswered question had taught them to value patience. Every moment of uncertainty had made this new understanding feel even more meaningful. They no longer saw your journey through the narrow lens of old assumptions. They saw someone whose quiet consistency had spoken louder than words ever could. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. As the days continued, they noticed another gentle change taking place. Whenever they thought about you, their first reaction was no longer confusion or hesitation. It was respect. Respect has a remarkable way of opening doors that pride keeps closed. It invites compassion where judgment once existed. It creates space for understanding where distance once remained. Without forcing anything, their heart had begun making room for a completely different future. Then a simple question appeared in their mind, one they could not easily dismiss. If the truth about you had changed so much already, what else had they yet to discover? That question stayed with them longer than they expected. It encouraged them to look beyond appearances, beyond old stories, beyond everything they once accepted without reflection. For the first time, they felt that the most meaningful chapter had not been left behind, it was quietly waiting ahead. Something important is waiting for you, because the next step they take is not driven by uncertainty anymore. It is guided by a new understanding that is slowly giving them the courage to move closer to what their heart has been recognizing all along. There comes a moment when understanding no longer feels like a distant idea. It becomes a quiet certainty that settles gently into the heart, changing the way every tomorrow is imagined. That moment had finally arrived. The truth they had heard about you was no longer something they questioned or examined. It had become part of them, woven into every reflection, every memory, and every hope they quietly carried. Without realizing it, they had crossed an invisible line. They were no longer looking at who they thought you were. They were finally beginning to appreciate who you had always been. The change was subtle, yet impossible to ignore. They smiled at memories that once left them uncertain. They recalled conversations that now sounded completely different. Words they had overlooked suddenly carried warmth. Small gestures they had forgotten now felt unforgettable. It was as if every piece of the past had patiently waited for this exact moment, knowing that one day it would finally be understood in its true light. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. As they reflected more deeply, another realization quietly unfolded. They understood that genuine people rarely spend their energy convincing others of their worth. Instead, they continue living with honesty, allowing time to reveal what words often cannot. That realization reminded them of you. They saw someone who never needed to become louder to be meaningful. Someone whose quiet presence carried more strength than endless explanations ever could. This thought stayed with them throughout the day. It appeared during ordinary moments, transforming them into meaningful ones. While watching the sky change colors in the evening, they found themselves wondering how many beautiful things in life are missed simply because people are looking too quickly. Perhaps that had been true for them as well. Perhaps they had been searching for extraordinary signs while overlooking the quiet beauty that had been standing before them all along. Don't skip, because the next realization changed everything inside them. For the first time, they stopped thinking about what they had lost and began appreciating what they had learned. Growth had quietly replaced regret. Gratitude had gently taken the place of doubt. Instead of wishing the past had been different, they became thankful that truth had arrived before it was too late to understand it. That simple shift brought an unexpected sense of hope. Hope that meaningful connections can grow stronger when they are built on honesty rather than assumptions. Hope that understanding can arrive even after seasons of silence. As these thoughts settled into their heart, one quiet decision began forming without effort. They no longer wanted to carry old misunderstandings into the future. They wanted every step ahead to reflect the clarity they had finally discovered. They wanted their actions to match the respect and appreciation that had been growing inside them ever since the truth found its way into their heart. Something important is waiting for you, because the quiet decision they have made is about to lead them toward a moment neither of you could have predicted. The next chapter reveals what happens when understanding becomes courage, and when courage gently begins opening a door that has been waiting all along. Sometimes the greatest change cannot be measured by words spoken aloud. It is revealed in the quiet choices a heart begins making when no one else is watching. That is where this journey now unfolds. The understanding they had gained about you had become more than a memory. It had become a direction. Every day, without even planning to, they found themselves choosing kindness over assumptions, patience over haste, and reflection over quick conclusions. The truth they had heard had gently reshaped something deep within them, and they could feel that nothing inside them was quite the same anymore. There was no dramatic announcement. No extraordinary event demanded their attention. Instead, it was the peaceful certainty that continued growing with every passing day. They noticed how often your name quietly entered their thoughts, not as an interruption, but as a reminder of everything they had finally come to appreciate. Each remembrance carried a different lesson. One reminded them of your resilience. Another reminded them of your generosity. Yet another revealed how often your calm spirit had brought light into moments they once considered ordinary. Don't skip, because something important is waiting for you. As they reflected, they realized something they had never expected to discover. The truth about you had not only changed the way they saw you, it had changed the way they saw themselves. They began asking gentler questions. They listened more carefully. They became slower to judge and quicker to understand. It was as though your quiet example had inspired growth without ever asking for recognition. That realization filled them with gratitude, because meaningful people often leave lasting impressions without realizing the difference they make. One afternoon, while sitting quietly with their thoughts, another unexpected understanding arrived. They realized that genuine connections are never built by perfection. They are built by authenticity. By choosing honesty when it is easier to pretend. By offering kindness without keeping score. By remaining true to one's values even when no one is watching. Suddenly, the qualities they admired most were the very qualities they had finally recognized within you. Stay till the end, because this is only the beginning of what their heart is preparing to understand. The future no longer felt uncertain in the same way. Instead of wondering whether life would bring another opportunity to appreciate what they had discovered, they simply carried the lesson with them wherever they went. Every new experience reminded them that some people enter our lives not to create noise, but to leave behind quiet wisdom that continues growing long after the moment has passed. That is exactly how your presence now lived within their heart, steady, peaceful, and impossible to overlook. Then one simple thought appeared, and it refused to fade. What if the truth I discovered was only the first chapter? That question stayed with them through every quiet morning and every peaceful evening. It was not driven by uncertainty anymore. It was driven by hope. Hope that understanding can continue to deepen. Hope that meaningful connections are strengthened by honesty. Hope that every lesson learned with sincerity becomes the beginning of something even more beautiful. Something important is waiting for you, because the next chapter reveals the quiet step they are finally ready to take, a step inspired not by impulse, but by the lasting truth they now carry about you deep within their heart.